Welcome to Lilywhite Lab after a very chaotic game, man. Probably Thomas Frank's worst nightmare in that. But yeah, I'm gonna break down sort of what the setup was. I've got my notes here. Took a lot of notes throughout the game. Um, but I'll just give some context to how I was feeling. Obviously, as many of you will know, I was very disillusioned after that Arsenal game. I thought just everything about that performance was poor. But then it also kind of made me take stock of where we are under Frank and how poor it's been. Not just in the Arsenal game, but the negative approach throughout. Um, but one thing can't be said tonight, and that was that we were negative. We 100% were brave. We were aggressive. There was a clear plan there. We weren't hesitant. Um, so I'll quickly talk through the setup, what I kind of noticed, and then we'll have some questions at the end as well. Let me just see who's in the chat. Got Dylan Patel in there, sharing a surname. Callum Roach. 9 goals conceded in 2 games, and we've got a defensive-minded coach. Well, yeah, I think I'm gonna come on to that. That is a major point. But let's start with just how we set up. Let's hide them for a little bit. So we set up in this sort of very aggressive, narrow 4-2-2. We had Bergvall sort of in this wide 10 role, along with Sarr in this wide right 10 role. Double pivot of Graham Bentancur. Back four, Spence, Van de Ven, Romero Porro, Richarlison, and Kolo Muani up top. So I think the first thing I want to talk about is how aggressive we were in the press, because we really looked to go man to man. So this was their front three. This Njantu was roaming a lot, but we know that Vitinha is the base. You have Ruiz and Neves kind of either side. So what we were trying to do is, as soon as they were playing out, when it went to, let's say, the left back, Sarr would lock in here, Muani here, Richarlison there, um, Bergvall would lock in there, Bentancur, Gray, Porro, Romero and Van de Ven, obviously, one of them going spare, Spence locked into Kvaratskhelia. One thing about PSG is that these players in the centre, including the wingers as well, sometimes are very fluid. So they're constantly rotating. But we were very aggressive and locked on man to man. So this made it really, really hard. And then obviously we kind of tried to shuffle them into these wide areas and then step in where we could. I think it worked really, really well. And I think part of the reason it worked is because of how mobile some of these players are. Sarr, Bergvall, Gray, Bentancur, Kolo Muani, Spence, Van de Ven, they're all very, very good athletes. They can cover ground super, super well. And so I think that makes such a difference when you want to be aggressive. And if we can go off Frank's word, which obviously we didn't see against Arsenal, is he wanted to be aggressive against Arsenal, but my God, we were not aggressive. So that was very, very effective in the first half. We didn't create anything clear cut, but what we were doing is being super aggressive in the press, and then when we did win it, obviously trying to create something. And I think at times, obviously, the individual quality let us down. These two, I think, struggled at times to kind of find a synergy in that first half. But we'll go on to Kolo Muani after. But obviously, he had a brilliant night. But one thing I wanted to really, really outline is how suited to an aggressive style of play this team is. And you look at these two centre backs now. For a lot of our games this season, they've been defending their own box. And while I think they're capable of doing that, we know both of them are really aggressive, front-footed centre backs. They want to step in high. I think Van de Ven did it brilliantly throughout the game. Romero, we're going to come on to, but first half, I thought Romero was possibly our best player. Yeah, we'll come on to the second half. But they're so much better suited to doing that. And I think when you ask them to defend their box, this is not their game. They're front-footed defenders. Now they can do it. We've seen that in the Europa League run; they were able to do it. But they're really, really struggling at times to defend their box. Sometimes they're slow to get out. Sometimes they don't track men. But when they do defend high up on the halfway line, they love to bite really aggressively, jump in to intercept and be really aggressive with the player they're up against. And I think that is a massive factor, that they're both aggressive centre backs and they need to play like that. I don't think they're suited to playing. I'm not saying low block because it's not always low block. You know, sometimes they're defending kind of mid block, but also at times we are retreating into this low block, and I just don't think that really suits what we want them to do and what their skill set is best at doing. So that's one thing. I think with the way that Frank supposedly wants to play, which is a lot of duels, a lot of kind of being direct and winning second balls, I think you need players who are going to be able to cover ground. And these four can cover ground. Now, I'm not saying you play all four at once, but Bergvall, Gray, Bentancur to a lesser extent, I think, Sarr, these three young guys, they can all run for days and they have so much energy about them. And that is so big on the way that Frank seems to want to play. And so I don't understand why he's been so reluctant to use them when they're athletic beyond belief. Sarr is kind of the dream Frank player because of his ability to win second balls. Bergvall can do a lot of what I think Damsgaard was doing for Brentford, which is carrying the ball from deep. While I don't like him in the 10, that seems like a profile that Frank would like. Gray, I think any manager would like him. And so I think it's been strange seeing those three not used enough. I think these two had a really nice connection tonight, a couple times down that left flank. I mean, Gray's ability to cover ground, like make these long busting sprints, because at times it was Bergvall out here, Gray making this long arched run round him to receive the ball in this sort of pocket, and we scored from this. That is a hell of a run, just in terms of physical capabilities. But then what Gray is so impressive at is when he does make those bursts, he has the composure and the kind of clean mind and ability to slow down and create a bit of quality from it. And whether that's, carrying the ball in this central area and then laying off a really nice and composed pass. I think that's what's so good about Gray, is that he can provide really good athletic abilities, but his decision making isn't affected by his fatigue, if that makes sense. I think that's a massive thing. So I think these three really have to be built around now. Like I really do think that. I think we're not learning anything new about Palhinha. And I know I've spoken a lot about Palhinha, but he doesn't move like these guys do. And you can win all the duels you want, but the ground coverage is also so important, especially, and I know we're going to come on to this, by the way, we have really struggled on the edge of our box, shifting over at times. We can see it again from it tonight. But I do think Palhinha has been a big issue in that as well, where he doesn't move like these guys do. And that's just not his physical profile. I think he's great at sitting and screening and being able to like look at danger in front of him. But when you're asked him to get across the pitch laterally, that's not him. And that seems like such a big principle for Frank. So I think again that's another point. And then also just the running capabilities in the forward line. And obviously I want to stress that this strategy is very PSG specific, right? There was very limited kind of structures in possession because, to be honest, we didn't need them. We were so aggressive, and we wanted to win the ball so high up that then you just play off the cuff, and there's not much strategy there. I mean, maybe we had a bit of a strategy for Gray to make that long overlapping run around Bergvall. That might have been one, but to be honest, a lot of that play when you win the ball in the final third is down to individuals and playing off the cuff. So yeah, there's not much for me that we can take from in possession. And also, I mean, I was looking for much more out of possession stuff today because I think that was the main strategy. But I think even when we were kind of building, there was a lot of off the cuff play, which I think in this game can be excused, but obviously we'll talk about more generally why that could be an issue. There's a few like small notes I wanna make clear. There was one moment in the first half where Jed Spence played a Travella pass like with the outside of his foot down the line, and I think this is obviously it happened once, but I noted it down because I think it's such a it could take him up a level so much if he's able to play that pass down the line for the left sider, whoever that is. Tonight it was Bergval, and obviously Richarlison over there at certain moments. But if he's able to add that to his game, that really transforms his attributes and his suitability to playing left back. So I really want to see that more. I think that was just one thing I noticed, but it's massive that he can actually do that and not just always come in field and that negative pass that we've seen him play to Van de Ven a lot. I think he's got the capabilities of doing it. He tried to do one with the in the second half as a cross. So that pass, I think let's see more of that. See what else have I got. Yeah, I think that's sort of it for the first half. Yeah, like I said, I mean this is a system that was obviously very suited to this game, and a sort of strategy that was this game specific. I don't think it was something we're going to see week in week out in terms of the shape, but also what I would expect from us playing against Fulham at home on Saturday, for example. There needs to be much more strategy in possession, but we'll come on to that. Let me see if anyone has any questions for now. Why not start Udogie? This one's from Nathan. Why not start Udogie? It seems to me that it has been a fitness issue. One time Spence crosses with outside of his right, which gets easy intercepted. Having a left footer there is a huge asset. Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think this is a squad issue. Like, I think we badly need another left back who can do what Udogie can. I think, to be honest, not playing him tonight was probably smart. And I think Frank knows that Fulham game is so big. And Udogie does more for our progression than Spence does. So I think, to be honest, I probably agreed with that. Although Udogie is the better left back, I think we need to be really careful with him. He gets injured a lot. Can you speak? Yeah, can you speak about? I'm going to come on to Kudus. I'm definitely going to come on to Kudus in this when I come on to the second half. Is there any first half questions or any general questions about the setup before I move on to the second half? Let's have a look. Why can't we play this setup in the league games? Okay, I'm gonna actually let's go to the second half and then I will start talking about the more general point of view. Second half, I mean, what is there to say about the second half? I think there's a few things. I think when you play that aggressively, one, substitutions are so important. Not that I necessarily think Frank got it wrong in substitutions. Maybe he could have done a couple more earlier, but they were clearly gassed, and I think there's a reason for them being gassed out. Richarlison, his fitness is just not that great. He gasses out anyway, pretty much every game. Moani hasn't played much football. Sarr hasn't played. I mean, Sarr never gasses out, so it's not really a point. But Gray hasn't played much football. Bergwijn hasn't played much football. These two had a huge job on their hands, to be honest, because they were pressing up here at times. So I'm not surprised they were gassed out. And that's when, at times, you have to be able to ride the storm and sit into a very compact, solid shape. And we did that well in the first time we played PSG. We did that very poorly tonight. And this is game management. This is individuals. This, for me, can be coached, of course, how you settle into like a shape, but there was individual errors here. There was, what ones were there? There was one where I can't remember the fifth goal. There was one where Romero, for me, I mean, he delays it too long, plays it into Sarr's feet. I think Sarr could have protected the ball much better there and bought a foul. And I don't think he protected the ball well enough. But I think Romero put him under pointless pressure there. And that was an important moment in the game to kind of just ride out the next 5 minutes. PSG were getting a bit of a hold of it. And that's where your captain has to step up and be a manager of the game and talk to the team. Play a couple channel balls, get the team back up, and then we can kind of, gain some territory and be aggressive again and play in their half. And we kind of just ask for trouble there. Again, these things happen, but top teams don't make those mistakes. And yeah, that was one. Then there was another one where Romero did something so stupid. I can't even remember what he did because I haven't watched any of the goals back, by the way. But he gave the ball away and they almost scored. And then it went out for a corner and they scored from the corner. So that was another Romero issue. And then there was the last one where Romero tried to like be too aggressive over here, didn't deal with it, and then had to go charging out to the edge of the box, handball, penalty. He had an absolute shocker second half. I thought he completely lost his head. He was defending like the first season we bought him, where he was just immature, diving out, losing concentration on the ball. There was I can't think of a worse game from him for some time, which is weird because the first half was so positive. So yeah, I think, like I said, I think individuals kind of let that down. Um, but yeah, that's all I really want to say on Romero. I think the rest of the back line was okay in the second half. I think Romero and then, like I said, the shape was just a bit all over the place. I want to also obviously talk about we're conceding a lot of goals from, and I need to watch this back properly to see what the actual problem is. But we're conceding a lot of goals where the cross comes in, and this might be a coaching issue because Frank wants to pack out the box to make sure that we don't get beaten in the air in these situations. But what happens is it gets cleared, and there's this big space on the edge of the box where the opposition have time, and if they have quality, they're able to just put it in the back of the net, and we don't get out quick enough. And that, I feel like, is probably a symptom of trying to pack out the box and be solid in Frank's terms, where you want to have bodies back all the time. But I think that is potentially the reason. I need to definitely watch that back. But that is definitely a thing we're struggling with. I think both goals against Aston Villa, obviously Arsenal. I can't remember how many of the goals from the edge of the box, but a lot of them. And then tonight, obviously, I think there was two, maybe, yeah, two. So that's something that needs solving. I think obviously the club will be looking at that. That's a pretty Frankish like thing that he'll fix because it's a defensive side of the game. Um, then the last kind of point I wanted to talk about without talking about the subs, um, was Kolo Muani. I mean, I've been going on about this guy. I've been saying that he is our best striker. I've been saying that he is potentially the answer to our striker problems. People have been saying he's shit. People haven't watched him. He's barely played. I think every time he has played, he's looked clean. He's barely got service, but when he has, I think he's linked it well. First half, I think there was a couple like moments where he lacked a bit of kind of synergy with his teammates, but you can see the quality he has. Like there's the assist for the Richarlison one, which was just great awareness to just nod it back across goal. There was the one where it got cleared and he caught it on the volley so cleanly from like this angle. That was good. And then obviously the last one, which was just a great run, a great finish. You don't see Richarlison taking strikes like that because he can't even get the separation to do that. Moani has the physical and athletic capabilities to get away from his marker, which is just huge, and trying to set up your shots. And the other one I want to talk about is Solanke because he's not able to do that either. Moani is our only striker who's able to really get separation from his defender, set up a shot like from like this angle. So basically feint or whatever, or get it out his feet and then get an actual high quality shot off. Richarlison, he'll struggle to get separation. He's got no athleticism, no real kind of technical ability to drop a feint. And Solanke, it's just too clunky the way he shoots. So that's why I really like Muani as our striker, but I don't think he's just got that. I think his link play is really good. He's good in the air. He can run. He can run the channels. I think there's a proper player in there, and I don't want to underestimate how difficult it is playing in that mask. Like that looked like a struggle. And I think he was excellent tonight. So that is positive. One negative I want to talk about, because I think, to be honest, actually, I want to talk about both these. I think both of these two have been really poor recently. I'll start with Kudus. I think Kudus. I don't know what the problem is at the moment, but he keeps sort of. It's a lot of head down play, and I don't know if that's because we've been so reliant on him. We've constantly supplied him with that pass that I've talked about a lot, but he's just not really on sync at the moment. It feels like he's running into bodies. His kind of explosive and brilliant ball carrying ability that we saw early in the season, he struggled with a lot recently. We're not seeing him kind of accelerate away from people as he was. He seems a bit hesitant. And then obviously the final ball is an issue, and I think that's been an issue. But when you get him high volume of chances to do so, you trust that one of these kind of inconsistent final balls will come off. It's similar to how City had with kind of Sterling early on, Sane early on, but also Doku, Savinho. That they supplied their wingers so many times in the game. It didn't really matter if their final ball was inconsistent, because the amount of times they get their wingers into these positions, one of them is going to come off. I think what the issue is at the moment is we're only supplying our wingers or attacking players with limited opportunities, and when their final ball isn't perfect, like your Harry Kanes, your Sons, it's not gonna be fruitful, basically, because that's gonna take a few goes to actually come up with something quality. So I think one thing is to just get him the ball more in these areas and let him play himself back into form. But also, obviously, part of that needs to come from him. And then the other one is Porro, who I think is been his final ball has just been poor. Um, there was a moment at the end of the game where he had an opportunity to cross it, and we had like one man over in the box, and it looked like a pretty simple cross, and he put way too much on it. He just had to whip it across the face, and he put way too much on it. But it's not just that; it's like some of his passes from kind of these areas overhit. The pass that he has consistently in his locker is this one, which I think he always manages to do, which is a very tough pass to make across the whole pitch, and he's consistent with that one. But it seems like some really simple crosses from these areas he's just mishitting, and I think that just feels like a concentration or focus issue, because he's got the quality. So I think, yeah, that was the other person I wanted to speak on. But I will go into any questions you have now, pretty much. So hit me up with any questions. Do you think that could also be because we don't trust Van de Ven and Romero's man marking and aerial prowess when defending the box? What do you mean by, do I think what could be because of that? Is that you saying that, oh, that we're packing the box out? That could be it, to be fair. Although I think that that's just a principle that Frank likes in both boxes, to make sure you're packed in there and you have the numbers. We see it in the attacking third as well. He's massive on that. He's massive on kind of both boxes, being kind of strong and competitive in both boxes. So I do feel like that's a principle. And it's one that needs fixing, obviously, because it's causing us more harm. And I also think sometimes this might be some people might disagree with this, but I also think sometimes when you have too many numbers in the box, you cause more chaos for yourselves than you need to, and you don't. Our keeper's not great at coming to collect things, and neither of our centre backs are like elite aerially. But I think if you do have like an elite box presence in out of these three, and I'm thinking in my head now, like down the line when Vuskovic comes back, so you kind of want to leave. Oh, you kind of want to leave the space a bit open so that they get a run at it and they're not crowded out. They're not like blocked off to mark their players. So if you did have like a Vuskovic here, he can marshal that kind of area. Let me just draw it out. This kind of area on his own, and you kind of, you don't need so many numbers in there. I think maybe we're crowding it because we lack a real presence in there, and so that might be an issue. But obviously the ball's getting constantly cleared to this, and then we've got no one to kind of close it down, and they're trying to get out, but they're just too slow to do it. So that's another issue. Should have started Javi? No, I actually wouldn't have started Javi in this game, to be honest. Knowing how he was going to set up, um, I probably would have started Javi against Arsenal. But again, I don't know. I can't even work out what he was trying to do against Arsenal. So Javi, obviously, he will, but he also has to start against Fulham. That is the game where we need something from Xavi, but also Frank needs to be able to supply Xavi in that game because he's not been doing that. And so I hope that he really plays into that strength in that game. Can we set up this way in the league against Fulham? Will Frank go back to his old ways? So that's what I want to touch on now. Is no. The answer is no, we can't, and not because Frank won't do it, but because the the expectation from Spurs at home is not going to be to not have the ball, right? Fulham probably aren't going to try and play out against us. We're going to be the ones building because we're at home. Fulham, they might press aggressively, but to be honest, it's on us to create things and control the game and play it on our terms, which is what I've been very critical about with Frank, where when we have the quality advantage, start building some structures in place other than just set pieces and jewels that allow us to optimize our quality players. So we need some patterns of play. We need some, sustained attacks in the opposition half. And I really hope that in that game, he goes back to, let's just get the right people on, something like this. So this is for me a non-negotiable lineup on Saturday. Romero's suspended, isn't he? So we done so. This is what I would do on Sunday. You could have either Bergvall or Sarr in here for me. That's a toss-up, and I'd kind of be happy with either. Ioane, Charlison, Odegaard in that tucked-in role, Udogie providing the width. You go back to that 3-2 build-up shape, and then you can start creating some of those patterns that we saw that were really nice, where we had Udogie overlapping, Odegaard being in nice close proximity. This was if you remember the game against Copenhagen, albeit poor opposition, but those four were so good together. And we didn't even have Kudus in that game, but if you allow Kudus the space to attack his man 1v1, so you overload the left side, and then when you can, Simmons, for example, was able to switch the ball out to Kudus, and he's got his fullback isolated. That is something to really work with, and also this helps our angles to build out. Obviously, you've got this diagonal pass into midfield rather than what we've been seeing, which is these kind of straight passes. So they're not even on really, and we've instead just played that pass. But when you kind of stagger your lines a little bit, then suddenly the angles are on. They're diagonal passes, which means they're harder to cut out. Same as Udogie being high. That's a much more favorable pass than this, which is a straight pass and easy to intercept. So that I think is massive. And to be honest, I don't see how he won't start that. Like that is a no-brainer. If I see Palhinha and Bentancur in that lineup, I'm gonna go to the pub and not watch. Anybody else slightly concerned about Vicario's ability to save shots outside the box? I think he gets caught onside a lot. Yeah, to be honest, I think Vicario's shot stopping this season hasn't even been that good. I mean, there's obviously been a couple games where he's been excellent, but I think that is a no-brainer upgrade for me. Not in January necessarily, but that is just a position that can just 100% be upgraded. The full package, right? If he was dominant in his box, if he was able to collect crosses, if he was good with his feet, then the shot stopping is at a very good level and that's all fine. But because he doesn't have those other attributes, you're so reliant on his shot stopping. And when his shot stopping doesn't raise the level, then it's like, well, what do we really have here now? We don't really have much with that. Do you think that Vic's distribution is one of the reasons why we can't build? To be honest, no. It hinders us for sure. But to be honest, I think it's actually more detrimental to us going long. I think his long passing and these kind of passes that Frank wants a lot is to these wide areas. I think that's what he really struggles with. More often than not, especially as we have the centre backs taking goal kicks now, which I'll quickly explain why they do that. It's if you have Vicario here and you play to Van der Ven, then you've already kind of locked off just this side of the pitch. But if you have Van der Ven take it, or the other centre back, you play to Vicario. Van der Ven goes really wide, Danso goes really wide, and then you have both angles. So that's just to like open up the pitch for yourself. So I think there's not much to be said about it. I think his short passing is okay. We built a lot under Ange. I think where he's struggling is these longer passes. Pochettino built a team with Lloris in goal who was considerably worse than Vicario on the ball, and we made it work. Obviously, he could 100% be better, but I think there's other issues with the build up. Polina must play alongside Gray. Bergvall Gray will get run over in the Prem based on physicality. Bergvall loses the ball. Bergvall and Gray are more than physical enough to hack it in the Prem. That wouldn't be their issue. They're both massive. They duel really well. They're athletic. They can run. They can run better than Polina for sure. Bergvall loses the ball so much. I agree. For me, that's a maturity issue. And an experience issue, which I think will be ironed out the more he plays. But I agree. I think he takes too many risks on the ball. He's not, for someone of his technical ability, he's not clean enough in possession. He's not refined enough. He doesn't make good decisions all the time. Whereas Gray, while he may not be blessed as much as Bergvall technically, he's still a very good technical footballer, and he has the maturity on his side, which is why I think. Which is why I think he should be a mainstay in the midfield from now. I'm very, very sure on that. I think he's got the maturity, he's got the physicality, he's got the athleticism. Tactically, he's top, and he's just a really refined footballer. You won't often get lower than a 7 out of 10 from him. And I think I understand why Bergvall wouldn't play. I understand why Sarr wouldn't play, even though I'd play them alongside Gray. I understand why, because they have some deficiencies. Like Sarr, his technical refinement needs a bit of work. While he gives you so much in his running capabilities, and at times his carrying is really good as well. Bergvall, we know he's got a bit of magic. He can get up and down as well. His carrying is brilliant. He can score as well. But they both have deficiencies in their game. Whereas Gray, I don't see any deficiencies yet in his game. Obviously, he's not elite at anything yet, I wouldn't say, but his base level is super, super high. Question on our long-term goals. How do you think the team would look if we had James Maddison and Kulusevski fit? How would we set up? Do you think our season would be better? The short answer to that is I don't think the season will be much better. I mean, yes, I think, the season would be better because these two. Where is Kulusevski? What number is Kulusevski? It's been so long. Is he just not on here? I genuinely can't see him. Am I bugging out? Okay, I can't find Kulusevski, so let's just call him Kimatarin or whatever his name is. Imagine that's Kulusevski. So I think what so many of our issues has been this shape, which has been so rigid. And then you have. So let's say you add Maddison, I don't know, into this left wing role. Of course, that takes us up a level. And if you've got Udogie, that's great because that means Maddison and Simmons as dual 10s. That would be a proper good sight to watch. The way they can move, the way they can rotate, their technical level is super, super high. And if you get good players around good players, it's just a wrap. So I think that would be great. In terms of this straight line pass as well that we've been seeing a lot, Kulusevski can deal with that better than most. He's good at holding off players. He can roll players really well, just like Kudus. But I don't think him to Kudus in the way we're playing is necessarily much of a step up. They both have different qualities, but I think that one is pretty much a toss-up. I think Kulusevski has qualities over Kudus, and Kudus has qualities over Kulusevski. But in that kind of setup, I don't think that changes us massively. I think Maddison would play in this sort of inside left role, or Simmons would play in this inside left role, and that is obviously a step up from Odobert. But in terms of like qualities that Odobert brings, it's a technical player, not that he's anywhere near the level of Maddison. And Maddison would have won us games just off pure quality. And that's one other thing I want to say is that like because we've had so limited moments in the final third, if you can set up and be solid at the back, and then you have limited moments in the final third, but you have players who can make it count, then obviously that goes a long way. And it worked to an extent in Conte's first season, where we had Kulusevski, Son, and Kane as a front three, and we didn't need many chances. Like we scored just off pure quality in the final third. And it does work, but I just don't think that's the most sustainable way of playing. Um, Wild Huss 938 Hikish, obviously unhappy how the game turned out, but that performance was actually decent. Yeah, I agree. I think for me, I'm taking kind of with a pinch of salt because, like I've said, I think that is a game that suits Frank because he can talk. Sorry, he can set up all around out of possession stuff, and I think he knows how to coach a good press. I think he knows how to compete. Even though obviously we lost the game, I think the performance was that of a Frank team, really good at competing with top teams, and punching above your weight, which we did tonight. My issue is like when you have the quality advantage, what can you do then? How do you coach this team to break teams down, or not even really break teams down because weak teams have pressed us high and we just haven't been able to play through them. So I think the main judgment for me is the Fulham game. That is such a big one, especially for the mood of the stadium as well. I think that's going to be massive. What is the bare minimum you see against Fulham to feel good about Frank and our direction? I think the bare minimum for me is this shape that has been our best performances so far this season have been in this 3-2 shape. Um, with the doggy flying up the left flank, the left winger tucking in, Porro being more reserved and kind of creating a bit from deep, having your base here who are able to actually be a bit more progressive because you have Porro deeper, so they can receive it on the half turn. If you kind of look at how Sarr might receive that, it's if I can do this, it's viewing there and it's on the half turn. So then one touch and you can open up and play forward. I think this just really, really helps. So I think the bare minimum for me is this shape. And there is no doubt in my mind that I want to see 2 of these 4 midfielders. Don't care which ones, really. Ideally, I'd have Gray and I'd have Bergvall in this game, but I'd be fine with Gray and Sarr. I'd even be okay with Gray and Bentancur or Bergvall and Bentancur, although I don't like that as much. But mainly these 3, but I would forgive him if it was Bentancur as well. That in midfield. And I guess this front 4 picks itself, doesn't it? I don't really see how. I mean, I would be very upset if he chose Richarlison over Kolo Muani after tonight, but I feel like he just won't do that, surely. So yeah, that's my kind of bare minimum. Could you see James Maddison as a double pivot? This is something I've been asked. No, probably not. But what I can see is something which we kind of saw under Ange a lot, where you play a bit more of a single pivot, whether that's Gray and then you have, maybe Maddison and Simmons like that. And then you have, Maddison really dropping in to help progress the ball, and just his quality on the ball could be really helpful in progressing up the pitch. And then you kind of, at times it looks like a double pivot, but you defend more in something like this probably. Although that does worry me, that shape. But against low opposition, when you're really like in the opposition half trying to pick the lock, I think there's times where that could be sufficient. Yeah, Kulusevski's number 21. Was he there? Am I bugging out? No, he's not there. What the hell? Okay, I don't know why that is, but given Frank's adaptation in this game, are you still Frank out? Yeah, because I think this adaptation was self-explanatory. Like it was similar to how we set up against them in the Super Cup, but even more aggressive, which I really liked. I think the bravery, the aggression was great, but I'm not going to be converted until I see us dominate a game against a lower opposition, especially at home. I'm going to the game on Saturday, and I want to see a performance where we dominate games and create chances, because it's all well and good being able to compete in those big games. Bear in mind those games, then you turn them into kind of 50-50 games anyway. So you're going to lose some anyway, even when you play well, like we did against PSG twice. Obviously, we beat Man City. I think that's how those games can go. But it's the games where you should win, you should dominate the game, and you should be playing in the opposition half for the majority of the game. That's what I need to see before I kind of convince myself again. Can one of Bergvall actually be turned into a proper six that we need, and which one? I don't see this is a myth. I don't think you need a proper six. I think the way we play, you need a well balanced double pivot pair. And what do you need from both of them? You need players that can move and get about the pitch athletically, that provide balance. So obviously at times it might bend around and you get one of the pivots moving towards the left, and then it kind of shapes around that way as well. But you need players that can do it all. Obviously, when you get to the top level, then you start looking for more kind of specialists, I guess. But even the specialists that other teams have, like you're looking at Caicedo, you're looking at Declan Rice, you're looking at Gravenberch. Like these players, Gravenberch plays as a single pivot as well. These players are very rounded regardless, but then they have special qualities like Declan Rice's transitional ability, Caicedo's ball winning ability. But I think what you're looking for in the double pivot is just balance, players that are kind of jack of all trades and have certain qualities. And I think these three are that, and Bentancur to an extent as well. I think they're double pivot players. They suit a double pivot because they're not necessarily protective enough to. I think Gray could grow into that, but to kind of marshal it all on their own. But in a pair, they have the qualities to do so, in my opinion, anyway. Home fans and getting to the lane. Home fans and getting the fans feeling that connection to the lane will be pivotal to Frank's success. And I think there's only one way to do that, and that's attacking performances and looking to dominate games. If he goes out on Saturday and has a similar kind of game plan to what we've seen so far in certain games, then the crowd will get toxic very quickly. Did I see a more Thomas Frank identity today? Yeah, but I think we have to be very careful in comparing a game like today to a game like Fulham. Like different games require different things, and I think in certain games we're going to need to have not much of the ball. Like today we had, I don't know, 33% possession, but we were well in the game. But that's not going to hang against the likes of Fulham, Brentford, Wolves. Like those games, you should be dominating the game and creating numerous chances. Against PSG, we didn't create numerous chances. We had our moments, but against low opposition, we should be able to create more chances. Someone in midfield has to be elite in defense against top teams. Against weaker teams, these passive players aren't physically dominant. I don't know what you mean by that, but I would say that's not true. Liverpool won the league with Gravenberch, McAllister, and Szoboszlai in midfield. I wouldn't say that any of them are elite defenders on their own. They're all capable defensively, but I wouldn't say they're kind of elite defensive players. It's definitely not a factor. Who else? What would you say is our best midfield three against low opposition like Fulham? Yeah, for me, I touched on it, but I think Simmons is a no-brainer in the 10, especially until someone like Kulusevski or Madison's back. And then the midfield three that I want to be building around, I think Gray is first name in the midfield team sheet, and then I would rotate these two. I think these two are the furthest away from being ready to be relied upon every week. While I think Bergvall maybe has the highest ceiling, I think there's still a way to go in his kind of maturity. Saar, I think, needs some technical refinement. Gray, I think, is the most reliable out of all three. And you can rely on week in, week out. What would be your most preferred left wing and left back, which Spurs should go for January? I'm gonna get videos out on this, to be honest, but I would leave the left wing till the summer. And I would definitely get a left back in. I've got a few options on my list, but I will get to those videos soon. By the way, guys, if anyone's not subscribed, please do subscribe. I want to get to 10K ASAP. Thanks, guys. 1212. Have a good night. Hopefully we get a win against Fulham. Let me know, guys, if there are any final questions before I wrap this up. You'd argue that Gray has a higher ceiling, or is it just that he seems to have matured in his step place? Yeah, I think Gray is the most ready to play Premier League football. I think physically, mentally, tactically, technically, he's of the level in every aspect. Like I said, I don't think he's elite at anything yet, but you're never going to get lower than a 7 out of 10 from Gray if you play him enough. I think Bergvall has that star quality that could potentially go on to run midfields for years, but needs some maturity for sure. Didn't say they only had to be defensively skilled. The all-rounders you mentioned aren't at Gravenberch, Rice, Mendy, and Caicedo. Yeah, and of course, our midfielders aren't at Gravenberch, Rice, Mendy, Caicedo levels because we're not at that level. And they're also 19, 20, 21 years old. So I'm not expecting them to be that, but they could grow into that for sure. Gravenberch at 21 was struggling at Bayern Munich, not getting games. Rice at 21 was at West Ham. Zubimendi at 21 was at Sociedad. Caicedo at 21 was at Brighton. So, you know, there's a big ceiling for all of those guys. Do you think we need another centre back, someone with greater box defending in January and summer? Or no, I definitely avoid more centre back signings. I think we need to review that in the summer because we've got Dragusin, Danso, Romero, Van der Ven, Vuskovic coming, Byfield in the academy who's top. So yeah, I would wait on that. We really need a controller. I don't think Gray can become one. Yeah, I agree with that. I still think I would target that. With this midfield, I'm talking more the rest of the games until we get to a transfer window, and hopefully we can target one in January. But I think with these three at the moment, it's the best we're gonna be able to provide, and also it gives them valuable time to develop. Okay, one more question, then I'm gonna jump off. Please can we sign left back in Jan 100%. That's desperate. That'll be my first signing for sure. One more. Well, I'll do one of the previous ones. Okay, would you give Madders a Çalhanoğlu role when he's back in the pivot? See, this is something that requires when you have a player like that in a single pivot, so much of it is required to have a really good in possession game because you can't rely on them defensively, but also, you know, so much of that the advantages of having someone there is in that build-up phase. And if Frank doesn't want to prioritize central progression, you're never going to see someone like Maddison dropping into that zone because that is a difficult one for Frank to see. So it worked for Inzaghi, but they had so many good rotations, so many good patterns in their build-up phase that really allowed Çalhanoğlu to be a key part of that. And there was upside there. I think Frank won't do it because it's not our style of play. So I think in essence, he probably could do it. I mean, he'd need protection around him for sure, but we won't see it under Frank, that's for sure. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up. Don't think we should make permanent. Yeah, I would agree. I'm not going to get into him again because I know people love him, but I think he's holding us back a lot. But make sure to subscribe, guys. Thanks for watching. Hopefully we get a win against Fulham. I will do a nice positive breakdown if we can put in a performance. And when I say a win against Fulham, I don't want to just nick it 1-0 from a set piece. I want to dominate them and actually see some signs. So hopefully we get that. Hopefully we get a good lineup and then a good performance. But thanks for watching, guys. And we'll be back soon.